Listen, Secretary Sohara and myself over the last year have gone across the country, have met with law enforcement, small and large, including our National Police Service, the RCMP, OPP, Sûreté de Quebec, our BC division, and a range of police services like City of Toronto Police, Peel Regional Police. And the one constant that we heard from all of them is the need for a lawful access framework. Right now, our law enforcement agencies are really struggling to protect victims of sextortion, victims of childhood sexual exploitation, victims of regular extortion, victims who are struggling to find their loved ones because of the increased use of technology that is far outpaced the ability of law enforcement to do its job effectively. At the end of the day, Lawful Access Bill C-22 is about victims. It's about ensuring that law enforcement have the right tools at the right time to be able to do the work that they desperately want to do, which is to save lives and to save communities and to save individuals from harm. And lawful access regime that we put forward, Bill C-22, reflects what we've heard from a range of stakeholders. And I will say that as this goes through the process, the parliamentary process, we look forward to working in a collaborative manner to ensure that we listen and respond to some of the concerns that have been expressed. So whether it's on encryption, whether it's on ensuring that our laws are in line with the Five Eyes partners, including the U.S., we will respond in kind and ensure that the bill is strengthened and it will go forward in a manner that protects, has charter protections as well as is in line with Canadian values.
Will there be backdoors into devices? This is what Apple says.
Let me be absolutely clear. There are no backdoors that is available through this bill. What we have said is that anything that may cause systemic vulnerabilities does not have to be applied by an individual service provider. I will also say we're living in a world where big tech, whether it is Apple, Google, or the range of other big tech companies, are operating without any type of accountability, without any type of protection of privacy. So when we talk about privacy, there's a real conversation to be had as to what that entails. So the companies that are coming forth and talking about privacy protection, talking about vulnerabilities, better step up and provide their path to how they're protecting the privacy rights of Canadians.
Do you believe tech companies are misinforming Canadians on this bill?
I believe there's a number of areas of misinformation. And to be very clear, the encryption issue is one we will clarify because this bill was never meant to breach encryption. The language is very clear. It's about systemic vulnerabilities. To us, we read that as ensuring that if encryption is breached, then that would not be allowed. So we will clarify it in the bill, and we look forward to working with the opposition on an appropriate language that we can live with. But also, the level of misinformation that is out there really doesn't speak to what the bill says, right? So for example, when we talk about metadata, and again, we will clarify what metadata is. Metadata, it does not imply that we are looking for backdoor ways of collecting information. This is about retention of data, and if you look at the Five Eyes G7 countries, they have very similar types of legislative tools that are embedded within their lawful access regime. Canada, incidentally, is the only country that doesn't have a lawful access regime. So it is not a matter of, this is an optional bill. This is something that needs to happen. And as technology evolves, as technology continuously far outpace all of our abilities to even understand it, we need to have better tools. And what I believe is that C-22 brings us to date with what's required, and we need to continuously evolve and evaluate what more is needed.
Minister, can I just jump in on the point you just made about privacy concerns about tech giants? Explain to me, do you find that big companies like Apple, Google, and Meta who testified don't actually protect people's privacy? Is that your point?
Well, my point is that there's no transparency on what type of privacy that is being protected. So we know, and it's generally accepted that email platforms, for example, does have ability to use our information, our buying habits, our consumer habits, what preferences we have. So there's a number of information that is gathered by all platforms, and I don't want to highlight just one because I do think it's across the board. And that information is readily and consistently collected. I drive a vehicle where every single point that I drive to is tracked, and it is not, that data is not with me. That data is not, that data is with the car company, and we are all driving vehicles that now have different levels of capabilities, but ultimately that level of micro information is available to be used for AI, to be used for. Well, I want to be constructive in this conversation. What I'm saying is for law enforcement to do their job, we need better collaboration with tech companies. Tech companies have refused to essentially cooperate in this process, and what we are looking for right now with lawful access is are modest measures that every other Five Eyes country has, and we are just trying to keep up. And misinformation doesn't help us advance what I think should be a very important debate, because look, the privacy rights of Canadians are significantly important to us. It is critical that our privacy is protected. And lawful access, the way our framework works, it does have measures in place that ensures that privacy protections are there, and there's judicial oversight over the work that law enforcement will be doing.
Would you accept an amendment around metadata? That's also a big concern, that the year-long retention date that's in the bill. Would you be open to lessening that to a few months, as some people have suggested?
So the language says up to 1 year, retention up to 1 year. And it's very much in line. Australia, for example, has a 2-year retention period. So I believe 1 year is a reasonable timeline. If you look at a life of an investigation, oftentimes it takes several months to even get to that point, if not longer. So 1 year is informed by what law enforcement has said that they require for them to be able to do their jobs more effectively.
Aside from the encryption and clarifying on that, what exactly are you willing to clarify other than that, or walk back on, because you are just defending most of the bill?
What amendments will you bring today?
Well, I will say that we're working on a number of amendments. I talked to. We have until I think 5 o'clock today to provide that. I just spoke to. Actually, we can go and draft it together if you want. I just spoke to my Conservative colleagues. They're working on their amendments. In general, what we will ensure is that there's clarity on what encryption is. We will ensure that there is a clear definition on what metadata is. We would ensure that the metadata piece is in line with our U.S. counterparts' language in their bill that essentially speaks to lawful access. And we will also, we've heard on the issues around compensation for services, for telcos, for electronic service providers. Again, the language does enable the minister to provide funds under some limited circumstances. So we will look at all of these. We will look at a range of bills amendments that will come forward, and we will be reasonable in how we assess it. And we will, what we are looking for is to get this bill passed through the House as soon as possible. Law enforcement does require this as a baseline for them to be able to do this.
One last question. I'd like to ask a question. You talk about privacy, and the Privacy Commissioner yesterday proposed a series of amendments to tighten things up in that regard. Are you willing to accept his amendments?
I will be looking at his amendments. I will look at his proposals. I did speak to the Privacy Commissioner earlier, and I will be looking to see what he has to offer.
Do you want this passed before the summer? Do you want this passed before the summer?
When will the Foreign Influence Registry be fully operational and ready to start enforcement and have that sort of the registry available for the public?
That's the last question.
Yeah. So we have appointed a commissioner, and Anton Bogman. The regulations are more or less finalized. We will be gazetting them, and we look forward to its operationalization. The work is being done right now, right? So it'll be operational within weeks. My understanding is that it'll be operational within weeks. Thank you.
Notre belle équipe conservatrice continue de nous battre pour un Canada qui est abordable chez nous, sécuritaire chez nous, uni chez nous. Mais après 11 ans de ce gouvernement libéral, la vie coûte plus cher, elle est plus dangereuse et le pays est plus divisé que jamais. M. Carney a promis qu'il allait renverser toutes ses paroles et tout ce que le gouvernement libéral avait fait pendant 11 ans. Mais on apprend, après un an de M. Carney, que c'est plus de coups, plus de crimes, plus de corruption, plus de division et plus d'annonces sans action. Il est juste un autre libéral. On a vu ça aujourd'hui avec une autre grande annonce par rapport à l'énergie. Tout d'abord, c'est une entente avec l'Allemagne. Est-ce qu'on a vu ça déjà? Je vais vous rappeler, parce que vous, les médias, avez donné une énorme couverture à notre entente avec l'Allemagne. En 2022, une déclaration pour la vente d'hydrogène en Allemagne de côte de l'Est. Et la date de livraison, 2025, c'est dans l'entente. Savez-vous combien d'hydrogène on a versé en Allemagne? 0. En fait, il n'y a même pas le début de construction pour l'exportation d'hydrogène en Allemagne. Juste pour vous rappeler que les grandes ententes que les libéraux aiment mettre dans l'air, ça vaut absolument rien. Alors, on a une autre grande annonce aujourd'hui, mais avant de commenter, je vais faire une annonce. Les conservateurs vont introduire un projet de loi obligeant tous les ministres des Ressources naturelles d'avoir une formation dans la géographie. Parce qu'aujourd'hui, on a appris que le ministre des Ressources naturelles n'est pas au courant de la géographie du Canada. Il y a un petit problème qui empêche l'envoi de gaz naturel de la Colombie-Britannique en Allemagne. C'est 5000 kilomètres de terre. Donc, on a demandé au ministre comment est-ce qu'on va envoyer le gaz naturel de la Colombie-Britannique en Allemagne. Il a dit qu'on va contourner l'Amérique du Sud ou bien et retourner nord vers le nord de l'Europe, le mer Nord, ou bien on va aller par le Pacifique, autour de l'Asie, autour de l'Afrique, autour de l'Europe, touchant presque tous les continents du monde pour livrer un jour le gaz naturel. Ça, c'est après que les libéraux ont tué les 3 projets de gaz naturel sur la côte l'Est du Canada. Au Terre-Neuve, il y avait un projet tué par les libéraux. Au Nouveau-Brunswick, à Saint John, un renversement d'une usine d'importation qui allait pouvoir faire l'exportation, tué par les libéraux. Et aussi, Saguenay, le projet GNL Québec. Monsieur, où est mon ami? GNL Québec, notre député a fait avancer ce projet, tué par des libéraux. Donc, on aurait pu avoir une distance qui était la moitié que les Américains doivent faire pour aller en Europe et alimenter l'Allemagne, que les libéraux ont bloqué ça pour nous dire que maintenant, on va l'envoyer de la Colombie-Britannique. c'est une autre illusion, une autre promesse libérale qui ne va jamais se réaliser. Je suis certain qu'ils ont déjà accompli leur mission, c'est avoir des grandes annonces avec une grande couverture médiatique, mais comme l'entente qu'ils ont déjà fait, vous vous souvenez de ça? Vous avez tous fait des grands articles là-dessus. Wow! C'était incroyable, la couverture était excellente. Vous savez que ce n'est pas juste qu'ils n'ont pas livré, ils ont effacé l'annonce, ça n'existe même pas sur l'Internet, vous ne pouvez plus le trouver. Donc, c'est comme toutes les illusions, ça disparaît après l'annonce est complétée. Donc, on ne peut pas faire confiance aux libéraux dans leur grande illusion. Ils ne vont jamais livrer. Ils ont gardé en place toutes les lois anti-développement de Justin Trudeau, toutes les taxes qui vont empêcher le développement des ressources naturelles. Et en conséquence, nous avons la pire économie dans le G7. J'ajouterais qu'aujourd'hui, M. Carney a dit qu'il ne va pas révéler le contenu de son entente policière avec la Chine. Il a dit il y a moins d'un an que la Chine était la plus grande menace au Canada et maintenant il y a une entente pour les forces policières avec ce même gouvernement autoritaire. Donc, nous, les conservateurs, revendiquons que l'entente avec la Chine sur les polices soit livrée et publiée et divulguée pour tous les Canadiens. Nous voulons une réalité qui est sécuritaire, qui est abordable et un pays qui est uni et on va continuer de nous battre pour ça. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. As you can see, we have our great Conservative team here working together to bring about a Canada that is affordable at home, safe at home, secure at home, and united at home. All things we were 11 years ago, but after a decade of Liberal government, life is expensive. 2 million people line up at food banks. Housing is out of reach for an entire generation. Crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder are rampant in our streets, and the country is more divided than ever before under this Liberal government. What we've learned is Mark Carney's promise that he would reverse everything he had said and that his party had done in the prior 10 years was all an illusion. It's been more cost, more crime, more corruption, more grand announcements without action, more of the same. He is just another Liberal. Take, for example, today's headlines without deadlines. The Minister of Natural Resources made a grand announcement of a deal with Germany. And where have we heard that before? I have here the last time the Liberals announced a deal with Germany. The joint declaration of intent between the Government of Canada and the Government of the Federal Republic of Germany on establishing a Canada-Germany hydrogen alliance. In this agreement, to which you all gave copious amounts of coverage, uncritical coverage, they promised that they would be delivering boatloads of hydrogen to Germany by 2025. Well, here we are halfway through 2026. And how many boatloads of hydrogen have been delivered to Germany? Zero, not a tablespoon. In fact, there's not even a shovel in the ground for a future hydrogen terminal that could ever manufacture or ship the stuff. And now they're getting another round of uncritical media coverage for yet another fake agreement that will ultimately result in nothing. But before I comment on that, let me just say Conservatives are announcing today a new private member's bill that will require mandatory Geography 101 for the Minister of Natural Resources. Because today he was asked an inconvenient question, how are you actually going to get natural gas from British Columbia to the North Sea? And his answer was that there's going to be a ship that's going to go all the way down to the Panama Canal, along the side of the United States, and then through the Caribbean islands, all the way back north to Germany. But most ships, he says, will be too big for that. So they'll have to go all the way down around the southern tip of Latin America, and then all the way back. But even more than that, he's going to have ships that are going to go across the Pacific, around Asia, around Africa, and then all the way back to the northernmost part of Europe, where they will deliver the gas, when we could have simply delivered the gas from eastern Canada, where there were 3 terminals that the Liberals have killed. One in Newfoundland. We have our members from Newfoundland here. Jonathan. Jonathan's here. His constituents could have been working on the LNG Newfoundland and Labrador project, which would have pumped gas from the Jeanne d'Arc oil field to a liquefaction ship on the shore off to Germany. Liberals killed it. Then there was the reversal of the Repsol terminal, which was going to take an existing import terminal, turn it into an export terminal, send it off to Europe in St. John. We have our member from St. John here, whose constituents lost out off that opportunity when the Liberals killed that. And then the third, Saguenay, the LNG Quebec project, which would have liquefied Canadian gas on the St. Lawrence, sent it off to Europe. Liberals killed all three of these projects, which, by the way, would have delivered gas in half the time it takes to get from the U.S. Gulf Coast, and instead those projects are now dead. And the Liberals expect us to believe that someday, over the rainbow, they're going to send ships through 4 continents all the way around the world to do what we could have done in a quarter of the time if they had not stood in the way. It is more headlines without deadlines, announcements without actions, illusions without reality. When is the media coverage actually going to scrutinize the results of these endless announcements and look at what they actually deliver? We as Conservatives want to repeal all the anti-energy laws, provide pre-permitting for LNG liquefaction plants and the pipelines to supply them so that they can get approved within 6 months, get rid of the industrial carbon tax, and that we can get these projects done. I would add, by the way, you actually don't need to sign new agreements because the rest of the world is already begging for our energy. It doesn't take a master negotiator to convince a man in the desert to take a glass of water, right? It takes the ability to deliver the glass of water. And right now, it's not that the Europeans or the Asians are keeping our energy out, it's that our Liberal government is keeping the energy in. We need to repeal those laws, unlock our industry, no more phony announcements. It's time to turn the illusions into a reality and start getting things done. That's why Conservatives keep fighting for a Canada that's affordable at home, strong at home, safe at home, and united at home.
Qu'est-ce que vous pensez du départ de M. Steven Guilbeault?
Évidemment, M. Guilbeault a réussi à imposer son idéologie anti-développement qui reste en place aujourd'hui. Les taxes carbone industrielles, une nouvelle taxe carbone pour les consommateurs, des lois de Justin Trudeau C-69, C-48 qui empêchent le développement de nos ressources naturelles sont tous inspirés par M. Guilbeault et ces lois restent tous en place aujourd'hui. Donc, M. Carney continue avec le patrimoine de M. Guilbeault et M. Trudeau et malheureusement, nous payons le prix avec une faible économie, avec une économie trop dépendante sur les Américains, avec le manque d'emploi.
On the development projects, the government has put forward a consultation paper on potentially shortening the times for approvals and moving the approval for pipelines to the energy regulator. I presume that will come into the form of a piece of legislation that will be before your desk. Do you support fast-tracking that bill if it comes forward?
What bill? Where is it? He's been in office for 14 months now, promising he's going to fast-track approvals. And what we have is a discussion paper. It's, you know, as Elvis Presley said, a little less conversation, a little more action, please.
What are your comments on that? And doesn't this show that Mark Carney is moving away from those Trudeau-era policies, given that
Like
Steven
what?
Guilbeault, well, they canceled the carbon tax.
And then they brought a new one in.
They signed this MOU with Alberta.
Which hasn't implemented anything.
They're supposed to by July 1st. I'm just saying, though, like there are these examples that were so egregious to Mr. Guilbeault that he felt the need to step down. So what do you make of that?
Well, I would say that Mr. Guilbeault should cheer up because, frankly, all of the radical anti-development net zero policies that he and Mr. Carney both supported over the last 10 years that are found in Mr. Carney's book are still actually implemented. Every single anti-development law remains on the books. The industrial carbon tax is not only on the books, it's going up 6 times, according to the Prime Minister. The consumer carbon tax has been renamed and reintroduced. It will be bigger and broader than the previous Trudeau carbon tax. And there is no pipeline that is actually pathed for which there's no investor, there's no start date, there's no proponent. So, frankly, Mr. Guilbeault's radical anti-development agenda, which Mr. Carney enthusiastically advocated in his own book, all of that remains in place. The illusions of grand announcements and smiley face signing ceremonies notwithstanding, everything remains the same, and Mr. Guilbeault's agenda is firmly crystallized under this Liberal government.
Has Guilbeault's career fueled Albertan independence?
I think he has fueled a lot of resentment, justifiable resentment, from people who can't work, I met people in rural Alberta, two gentlemen living, sharing a trailer, even though they're both qualified and licensed tradesmen who used to make six figures. They had to move in together at age of 50 because they can't work in their own sector. So the Liberal government, because they implemented all of the prescriptions in Mark Carney's book Values, the net zero agenda of shutting down oil and gas, have impoverished a lot of people, have weakened our economy, made it far more dependent on the United States. Mark Carney obviously founded the Net Zero Alliance, which was a coalition of banks who wanted to defund and destroy the oil and gas sector. And Mark Carney continues to ultimately implement that agenda in practice, even while he creates the opposite illusion on television.
Dans le dossier des avions radars, le Canada négocie avec Saab et non pas avec Boeing. Est-ce que, selon vous, on devrait craindre des représailles de la part des Américains?
C'est encore une autre grande annonce sans résultat. Il y a des consultations, des pourparlers, c'est les paroles. Et M. Carney a avoué qu'il n'y a même pas un contrat aujourd'hui. Donc, on n'a pas besoin de paroles, on a besoin de l'action.
Pourriez-vous nous dire si de votre point de vue, pourriez-vous nous dire si du point de vue des conservateurs, la majorité dans un référendum sur la séparation, c'est seulement et uniquement de 50% plus 1?
Nous supportons l'unité canadienne et on va travailler pour unir le pays au lieu de faire des menaces et d'attaquer les Albertains. Nous, les conservateurs, allons inspirer une unité à travers le Canada. Nous allons unir tous les Canadiens et nous allons encourager tous les Canadiens à communiquer leur grand amour avec les Albertains pour qu'on puisse s'unir une fois pour toutes. Merci beaucoup.
Of the planes, I'm wondering what you think of the government's attempt to move away from American military capabilities.
Well, we'll see if it's just another illusion, but let's just be clear that what Mr. Carney announced today was just more talk. There's no contract, there's no deadlines, so we're not going to debate Mark Carney's endless illusions and announcements. That would be to confuse activity with achievement.
Access reform bill C-22. Is there a path for Conservatives to support that bill in committee? And if so, what changes do you expect to see?
Well, once again, we see the Liberals going after the good guys. You know, they do this with firearms where they target licensed, law-abiding, trained and tested farmers, hunters, sport shooters, instead of going after gun criminals. When it comes to online crime, they choose censorship rather than shutting down perverts, pedophiles, and other predators. And now here we have another bill where they try to turn the entire tech sector into a gigantic surveillance arm of the state, which will kill many jobs and drive many of the best businesses out of our country. So it is just another example of a government that wants to control Canadians' lives. And you know, they've achieved something very unique. Normally we talk about the tension between liberty and order. They've managed to create total disorder while attacking liberty. You know, it's incredible. You see, we have total disorder in our streets. We're anti-Semitic riots everywhere, fire bombings of synagogues. We have crime and violent crime up 50%, extortions up 2,400% in Surrey, and yet at the same time, they are using the heavy hand of the state to rob people of their basic liberties. You know, some people think you have to choose between liberty and order. The Liberals choose neither. We believe you can have ordered liberty if you have a government determined to stand on the side of law-abiding people.
Carney's comments comparing the Alberta referendum to the Brexit movement, are those comments helpful right now?
I think we need hope, not fear. We need to bring people together. It's time for all Canadians to wrap their arms around Albertans. Let's tell Albertans how much we love them, how much we love the people of our province, how much Canadians love the people of our province of Alberta. Let's bring our nation together and actually be united. And that's going to be the tone and tenure of my approach throughout this referendum will be a positive, hopeful vision that will allow Albertans to be stronger within Confederation, with more autonomy, with more resource development, with bigger incomes, with safer streets. Those are the ideas, the positive ideas that will actually unite our country.
Have you Smith at all about this? Have you
I've spoken to Smith, yeah, of course.
About,
She's the Premier of Alberta.
About your disagreement on the MOU. She seems to be very happy with it. She's about to put in her application by July 1st. Have you told her that you don't think it's going to happen?
Well, I've told her that I will get rid of the industrial carbon tax, which is a job killer and which compounds the damage of American tariffs with Canadian Liberal taxes. I've told her that I would have approved a pipeline by now. I've told her I would have got rid of C-69, the anti-development law, and the shipping ban off the west coast of BC. And when it comes to the MOU, I'd encourage you to have a listen to the debate last night on the floor of the House of Commons, where Liberals were continuing to make passionate arguments in favor of banning oil shipping off the northwest coast of BC. So if Liberal MPs to this day believe in banning oil shipments off of the west coast, then where is this pipeline going to go? I mean, like, can we? Oh, okay. Well, it's very.
What does that signal to you?
What some of the which?
Liberal MPs are admitting they haven't even read the MOU.
Well,
what does that signal to you?
It signals to me that it's all an illusion, and that Mark Carney has told them it's never going to happen anyway. Ultimately, they believe Mark Carney was telling the truth when he wrote in his book Values that he wants to keep half of our oil and gas in the ground, when he's tried to defund oil and gas, and when he said carbon taxes should be bigger and broader. Liberal MPs who share that radical net zero anti-oil and gas agenda take great comfort in knowing that the Prime Minister privately agrees with them on that.
Si ça n'est qu'une illusion, pourquoi est-ce que Mme Smith est prête à travailler avec M. Carney?
Elle n'a pas de choix. Il est au pouvoir, malheureusement. Mais elle a avoué, elle a déjà dit que si j'étais Premier ministre, on aurait été déjà bien avancé pour bâtir une pipeline afin d'acheminer nos produits pétroliers au monde. Le gouvernement a besoin de faire qu'une chose pour acheminer nos énergies, c'est tasser du terrain. On n'a pas besoin de leurs obstacles. Enlever les obstacles permettant le secteur privé de bâtir des pipelines, des mines et des autres projets énergétiques.
Just quickly back
okay.
on the
One last question. We have to get going.
So it didn't sound earlier that there is a path for Conservative support for lawful access.
We'll have to see what happens, but so far we're extremely suspicious of a Liberal government who, instead of protecting law-abiding Canadians from criminals, once again, they try to create a surveillance state that concentrates more power in the hands of politicians and bureaucrats. We want exactly the opposite. We want more freedom for Canadians and more accountability and punishment for criminals. Thank you very much.
You may have questions about wanting to separate from Canada, whether they're fully there or separatist curious.
You know what? I am, along with the rest of my colleagues, I'm going to be fighting to have a stronger Alberta within a united Canada.
Are you going to be campaigning on the stay side?
Of course.
What is that going to look like? How do you campaign for something like that?
You know what? Let's just wait and see what the rest of the summer brings and et cetera. But I believe that this is absolutely important, and like I said, we need to have a stronger Alberta within a united Canada.
Okay, thank you. Vince.
We're for a stronger Alberta and a united Canada. So it's a very clear position I've made right from the very beginning.
Thank you. I think the Liberals can address the concerns and get this across the finish line in a way that addresses concerns from tech companies and Conservatives have brought forward.
Well, we'll see how willing they are to do it, and then we'll see.
Do you think they are?
I haven't seen that yet. I haven't seen that willingness yet.
What have you seen from them? Because it feels like a lot of people say we need something like this bill, but then what's in it seems to be the problem in how they're talking about it. So what have you seen from them?
Well, they've said that they're open to amendments, but what does that mean? Like, we don't want to just do window dressing and say, oh, well, we addressed the issues with the bill, we made some tinkering. You know, we have to have some pretty strong protections to assure Canadians that, you know, that government's being held to account and that these are, as the Privacy Commissioner said, proportional and necessary for the needs that the government are saying that they need.
What's the most important protections you think need to be in the bill that you don't see it in right now?
Well, the encryption protections, I think, need to be more clearly stated. I mean, when I talk to stakeholder groups, they tell me that the biggest cause of leaks in this country is government data, governments being subject to hacks and leaks. And so when we have companies being mandated by government to share their information with government, and that information is then leaked, it doesn't give the private sector a lot of confidence that if they're opening up their encryption, that it's going to be protected. And so we need to ensure that there are some stronger protections on encryption so that we can create that confidence by Canadians and by the private sector.
Okay, thank you. Sir, did you try and talk Mr. Guilbeault into staying? Did you try and change his mind?
Well, listen, what we should be talking about today is service and politics. He's a personal friend. I've been serving with him. He's an exceptional colleague. He's contributed a lot, but it's normal over time. People who serve like him for many years decide to move on. There's many ways to contribute to public life, and I'll let him speak. I think he's going to be speaking to the press today. But on a personal basis, you want to thank people like him who've devoted almost like a decade in public service, and it's normal that at some point of time, you move on in life and you say, there's different ways to contribibute, but I'm grateful for his contribution, as I'm sure many Canadians.
But it seems like he's
just need to go because we have question period.
Mr. Oliphant, how does it feel to be losing a colleague like Mr. Guilbeault?
Steven's a good friend. I've actually gotten to know him really well in the Foreign Affairs Committee this last year since he's been a minister, and I really appreciate him there, and he's brought really good questions and really good time.
What do you make of the criticism that he's leveled at the government? He's a prominent environmentalist who's, I think, feels maybe there's no more place for him, or he feels he can do that work better outside. What's it mean for your party?
I think our Prime Minister is showing you can do development, you can do major projects, and you can care for the environment. They may have a difference of opinion, but I think over the long term, the Prime Minister will be seen to be absolutely very clear that we need to protect our environment, we need to protect nature, we need to ensure that we fight climate change. At the same time, we have some major work to do, major projects that need to get done.
What do you make of the changes you've seen him made? An MOU with Alberta, a path to a new oil pipeline, lowering an industrial carbon price. Are you supportive of these changes?
I am, and we have an implementation plan now with Alberta, which I think shows the benefit of Canada to Albertans and the benefit of Alberta to Canada. So I think these are important projects.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Obviously, I'm very sad to see him go and that I didn't get to spend enough time to learn from him.
Are you disappointed that he's leaving?
No, I don't think disappointment's the right word. I think that all of us as parliamentarians, we should always respect each other's decisions, because I know that at the end of the day, we're thinking about our constituents and the work that we do.
What do you think it means for the government to lose such a prominent environmentalist?
He's a very, I really sincerely am sad to see him go. And I think that he will, knowing him, he'll continue to do his work to make sure that we're all doing a better job to protect the environment.
Are you comfortable with what you're seeing from this government and the government when it comes to climate change and taking action?
I am. I think that this government's doing great work, honestly, and I'm very happy to have been so warmly welcomed by the Liberal caucus.
Thank you. What do you make of your former colleague's news today?
To be honest, I don't know his news, but I always support Steven Guilbeault. It's a really tough job, and he has worked so hard. He has made massive family and personal sacrifices to step up on the most important issue that we face, climate change. And I know how hard it is, that every day, 24/7, you're hit by oil and gas companies, by the politicians they fund, by the lobbyists they hire, and it's not easy to fight for cleaner air, cleaner water, and for all Canadians who are all impacted by climate change. So I'm here to support him today. I certainly wish him well, and I know he'll always keep on fighting. I don't know what he's going to announce, so I'm going to wait till after that to make a statement.
What does it say to you that this Liberal government is losing an environmentalist as prominent and dedicated to this issue as Mr. Guilbeault has been?
Well, I actually don't know Minister Guilbeault, Steven Guilbeault's announcement today, so I'm going to wait.
He has said he's resigning.
Well, I just like to hear his statement in person, but I think, look, he is someone who has stood fast to, to tackle climate change, but also grow a clean economy. But it's extremely hard in this country. As I said, we have really powerful, rich oil and gas companies who fight you every day with politicians they fund and lobbyists they hire. And it could not be a more important thing. And I continue working on climate change because I know there are a lot of Canadians who care about it, but it's also about our economic future. I was just in Asia. I was with a sovereign wealth fund, Singapore Sovereign Wealth Fund, as I'm an advisor to them, and everyone there is talking about energy security as making sure that you get off fossil fuels, that you produce clean energy, that you don't import very polluting substances. And so, look, he's worked really hard. It's his day. I think it's really important that we have people in the Liberal Party who actually talk about the climate crisis and how we're actually going to reduce our emissions, because that's the test.
Is this Prime Minister doing enough on climate change?